The Moonlight Butterfly is an optional boss you can encounter in the Darkroot Forest, and you can actually reach this boss very early on in the game. As soon as you have come to the Undead Parish bonfire, one way or the other, you can get to the Moonlight Butterfly. And while it will be a bit of a challenging fight early on, it also gives you a nice boost in souls, which can help if you want a particular weapon early on but you need quite high stats to use it, for example. I have elected to fight this boss much later in the playthrough, so expect my damage to be very high. You should also note that all the butterfly's attacks are magical, so before entering the fight, equip the shield with the highest magic resistance that you have. The crest shield would be a good option if you've already gone back to the Undead Asylum to obtain it there. As you enter the fog gate, you will notice that the boss has to take quite a while before it's actually ready to fight you. It will slowly fly down and then stand in place for a while until you see this little jitter in its tail. Only then is it actually available for damage. Before, you cannot damage it at all. Which means that if you want to apply any weapon buffs or need to apply a consumable like a green blossom before the fight, you can do it after entering the fog gate because you have plenty of time before the boss is actually able to take damage. Far more important for many characters will be the fact that as the boss is flying around over and across the bridge, you cannot hit him with melee attacks. Ranged attacks work, miracles, sorcery, fireballs, firebombs, throwing knives if you feel like it, arrows, all work, but anything melee based will not be able to hit the boss as he's flying around. So keep that in mind when you're playing a melee character. However, this does not mean you are forced to equip a ranged weapon. Now you could, using firebombs for example, which require no stat investment whatsoever, and which can be bought from the male undead merchant or the crestfallen merchant in Sen's Fortress, but you're not forced to. There is a way to hit him with melee as well, it's just a little more of a patience game that way. But either way, you are going to need to dodge some of his attacks. Now the good thing about the butterfly is that he has very basic attacks that are not difficult to avoid at all. Firstly, there is a quite quick needle attack, I like to call it. This doesn't take long to charge up and fires 2 volleys of very fast moving projectiles. However, they don't have any homing properties, so as long as you're moving sideways you tend to just avoid them without even dodging at all. And they also don't do much damage, so they're also quite easy to block if you have a decent shield. Secondly, another common attack is this homing soul mass. These move a lot slower than the needles, but they do have a lot of homing property on them. So in order to avoid these, you probably want to dodge roll at the right moment. You can still get past them by just moving sideways, but it's a lot riskier. They are also more difficult to block because they do much more damage, so rolling is preferable method here. And then thirdly, this is a much rarer attack that you might not even see at all. You can see the butterfly facing away from you, and this means he's beginning to charge up his laser beam. This swipes across the arena quite quickly, and again you can block it, but I would advise rolling through it to avoid the damage entirely. And then finally, the boss has the ability to fly over the bridge to the other side. This isn't usually an attack unless the boss is at low health, in which case he couples this flying over the bridge with a magical blast. And this can be quite difficult to dodge because it has very good range. If you want to dodge it, the best way would be to run towards the boss rather than away from him. Now as the fight goes on, you will be dodging the boss's attacks, and if you have ranged means you will use openings to use your ranged attacks. However, if you don't have ranged means, you can still just keep dodging, and eventually the boss will run out of magic and need to recharge. And to recharge, he's landing on the bridge to basically gather magic from the flowers on the bridge. And that's a good opportunity for melee characters to get a lot of attacks in, because he's sitting there for 10 to 15 seconds, during which he does absolutely nothing. Now, if you start swinging on him and your damage isn't high enough to kill him in one cycle, then eventually you will see a magic explosion starting to charge up. When you see this, you should stop your attacks and get some distance, because this will be a magical blast that does decent damage. And then you just rinse and repeat, you dodge his attacks until he runs out of magic, he will land again and you can do melee attacks again. Quite basic and quite simple even if you don't have any ranged means. Now I said you can fight this boss very early on in the game for a 10,000 soul boost, which is quite handy to have. But in order to do that you will need to somehow be able to damage the boss, and most of the means I've described so far might not be available to you yet if you don't have any ranged attacks and you don't have a good weapon. But not all is lost. You can turn human, and right before the boss fight down here under the stairs, behind a shrubbery, you can find the summon sign for Witch Beatrice. And if you summon her and get her into the boss fight, you've basically won. I have never ever seen her not able to solo the boss without you doing anything. The only risk then is you dying. So basically equip a shield and just block or dodge all the butterfly's attacks. Meanwhile Witch Beatrice will eventually kill him. And as I've said, I have never ever seen her fail. Either way, this is a not very tough boss and you will quite quickly be able to dispatch him. As a reward you get 10,000 souls and the soul of the Moonlight butterfly. Now with most boss souls I've advised you not to just consume them, and this is particularly relevant for this one because consuming it directly only gives 1200 souls, which is barely anything. So definitely keep this. You never know if you want to use the weapons you can craft from it. Alternatively, once Kingseeker Frampt has spawned, you can sell the soul to him and you will at least get 8,000 souls for it. So definitely don't consume this one, it just isn't worth it. You will also get a humanity and access to the other side of the tower. And in that you can find the Divine Ember, which is quite handy if you want to go to the catacombs. You can get the key to open Havel's Tower, which I've shown you earlier on in my playthrough. And you get a homeward bone, so you can get back to the last bonfire. Okay, I hope you found this guide helpful, and good luck. Bye bye.